What happens when you tell the one you love that you need to experience more before settling down, and the very next day, he changes the locks, locking you out of everything you thought you shared? This isn't just a story about heartbreak, it's about secrets, hidden pasts, and a love pushed to its breaking point. Behind that locked door lies a mystery that could change everything. Will honesty tear them apart, or could it be the key to a deeper connection? Stay tuned, because this story is about to get more intense than you ever imagined. I never thought a simple conversation could change everything so quickly. One night, I sat down with him, the man I thought I might spend the rest of my life with, and told him something I had been feeling for a while. I said, I need to experience more before I settle down. It wasn't easy to say. It wasn't easy to admit that despite all the memories, the comfort, and the plans we'd made, I wasn't ready to lock myself into a life that felt too small for me right now. I needed to see the world a little differently, meet new people, learn who I really was outside of us. I hoped he'd understand, or at least listen. Instead, the next day, everything changed in a way I never expected. When I woke up, the front door was locked, changed, actually. I didn't have a key anymore. I was locked out. It felt like a punch in the gut. How could something I said, something so honest and so personal, be met with such a final and cold response? The man I trusted more than anyone didn't just disagree, he shut me out. I was left standing there, confused and hurt, wondering if wanting more from life was such a terrible thing. This wasn't just about a door or a lock. It was about what happens when two people want very different things, and how fragile love can be when it's faced with the truth. This story isn't just about heartbreak or loss. It's about choices, about the fear of change, and about the courage it takes to be honest with yourself and the people you love. It's about what happens when the safe space you built suddenly feels like a cage. As I stood there, locked out not just of the house but of the future I thought we shared, I realized that sometimes the hardest thing isn't telling the truth, it's living through the consequences. So what did I do next? How did I face the silence that followed, and the man who changed the locks instead of talking? The answer isn't simple, and it's not something I expected. But this is just the beginning. Stay with me, because the story doesn't end here. I still remember the night I first met him, how easy it felt to talk, how natural it was to laugh together. We connected in a way that made me believe love could be simple. For months, everything seemed perfect. We shared dreams about a future filled with travel, cozy nights, and maybe one day, a home we could call ours. But somewhere along the way, something shifted inside me. The idea of settling down, of choosing one path and sticking to it forever, started to feel like a weight rather than a promise. I wasn't sure when the feeling first took root, but it grew quietly, like a whisper I couldn't ignore. I wasn't the same person I was when we met. I craved more experiences, more freedom, more time to figure out who I was outside of our relationship. It wasn't about him, really. It was about me and what I needed to feel whole. I tried to explain that, carefully, hoping he'd understand without feeling rejected or hurt. But when he changed the locks, it told me something I couldn't ignore, that maybe he wasn't ready for the kind of honesty I was offering. Maybe the future he imagined didn't have space for my questions, my doubts, or my need to explore. That locked door wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a symbol of everything falling apart between us. I kept asking myself, how did we get here so fast? Was there something I missed? Did he ever see me as more than someone who was supposed to fit into his plan? As I stood there, confused and alone, I realized that love can sometimes be more complicated than the fairy tales make it seem. And sometimes, the person you thought would walk through life with you can become a stranger overnight. But even with the door closed, my story wasn't finished. There were questions I needed to answer, and choices I had to make. What happens when the person you love can't accept the truth you're living? And how do you move forward when the life you imagined suddenly feels like it's slipping through your fingers? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew one thing: this wasn't the end. Not yet. After that day, the silence between us grew heavier than any argument could have been. I tried calling, texting, even reaching out through friends, but nothing broke through. It felt like he had erased me from his world overnight. The pain wasn't just in being locked out of the apartment, it was in feeling locked out of his heart, like all the moments we shared were suddenly just memories fading into nothing. I kept replaying our last conversation, wondering if I could have said things differently, if I should have hidden my feelings instead of being honest. But deep down, I knew I couldn't pretend anymore, not if it meant losing myself. Meanwhile, friends and family started noticing the change in me. Some told me I was brave for speaking my truth. Others warned me that maybe I was rushing into things, that love sometimes meant compromise and patience. Their voices echoed in my mind, pulling me in opposite directions. The pressure wasn't just about the relationship, it was about what I wanted for my life, for my future. I was standing at a crossroads, with the weight of his decision pressing down, but also the pull of my own desires pulling me forward. What made it harder was the mystery of his sudden reaction. Why did changing the locks feel like the only answer? Was he scared? Angry? Hurt? Or was there something else I didn't know, something deeper beneath his silence? I couldn't tell if he was shutting me out to protect himself or if he was giving up on us completely. Every unanswered question added to the tension, twisting my heart tighter. As days turned into weeks, I had to face the reality that sometimes love isn't enough to hold two people together. But was this really the end, or just a pause before something new? I wasn't ready to find out yet. Not without understanding everything first. Days stretched on with no sign from him. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, only to sink when it wasn't his name on the screen. I kept wondering if he was thinking about me, or if I had already become a stranger in his life. The apartment felt like a ghost town in my mind, even though I wasn't there anymore. That space, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, was now a symbol of everything I feared: loss, rejection, and the unknown future I was forced to face alone. I found myself walking past the building, hesitant to even look up at the door I couldn't open. There was a strange mix of hope and dread in every step. What if he reached out? What if he said he was sorry? Or worse, what if he was moving on without me? The questions kept spinning, impossible to escape. I couldn't stop asking myself what had broken us so completely overnight. At the same time, the rest of my life didn't pause. Work, friends, family, they all needed me, but my mind was stuck in this endless loop of what if. I tried to focus on myself, on rediscovering who I was outside of us, but the weight of the past kept pulling me back. The more I tried to move forward, the more I realized how tangled everything had become. Then, one evening, just when I thought I couldn't wait any longer, something happened. A message appeared on my phone. Not from him, at least, not directly. It was from someone else, someone connected to our story in ways I hadn't expected. The words were cryptic but urgent, and they pulled me back into a world I thought I was done with. Suddenly, the mystery wasn't just about the locks or the silence, it was about what I didn't know yet, what secrets might still be hidden beneath the surface. I stood there, phone in hand, heart racing, knowing that everything was about to change. But how? And in what way? I was about to find out, soon enough. The message blinked on my screen like a sudden crack in the silence I'd been living in. It wasn't from him, but from someone I didn't expect, someone from his past, someone I barely knew. The words were short, almost like a warning: you don't know the whole story. Be careful. My fingers trembled as I reread the message, trying to make sense of what it meant. Was this a threat? A hint? Or just confusion from someone who didn't want me digging deeper? Either way, it changed everything. I had thought the hardest part was dealing with his silence and the locked door, but now it felt like there was something beneath the surface, something more complicated than I'd ever imagined. What if his reaction wasn't just about me needing more time or space? What if there was something else, something he was hiding or protecting? The thought made my chest tighten, but I couldn't turn away. I had to know. As I started to piece together little bits of the past, conversations I'd brushed off, moments that suddenly seemed strange, I realized there were cracks in the story I'd been telling myself. I wasn't just losing him because of my fears or my need to explore. There were other forces at play, secrets tangled in his life that I hadn't seen before. The man I thought I knew was suddenly a mystery again, and that mystery was pulling me in deeper than ever. I wanted answers, but the more I searched, the more questions I found. And with every step I took, the distance between us seemed to grow wider, not just physically, but in ways that felt impossible to cross. Now, locked out and caught in this maze of silence and secrets, I had to face something I never expected. Maybe the person I loved wasn't ready to face the truth either. Or maybe, just maybe, the truth was something neither of us could handle. I knew I had to confront him, no matter how scared I was. The locked door, the silence, the mysterious message, it all led to one moment that couldn't be avoided. So, I found myself standing in front of his new apartment building, heart pounding, hands clammy with nerves. I wasn't sure if he'd open the door or turn me away, but I had to try. When he finally answered, the look in his eyes stopped me for a second, hurt, confusion, but also something deeper, something like regret. We sat down and talked, really talked, for the first time in weeks. He told me about the pressure he'd been feeling, the fear of losing control over his life, and how my need to experience more felt like a threat to everything he'd built. Then, he confessed something I never saw coming. The reason he changed the locks wasn't just anger or punishment. It was because he had been dealing with something he didn't want to share, a past mistake that was finally catching up with him. He'd been protecting me, or maybe protecting himself, from a truth he was ashamed of. The tension between us didn't disappear, but the honesty cracked open the walls that had built up. I realized that wanting to experience more wasn't the problem, it was the fear of vulnerability that kept us both trapped. We didn't have all the answers yet, but suddenly, it felt like we were in the same room again, ready to face whatever came next. Just when I thought we might find a way forward, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter, not from him, but from someone else. The letter revealed that the past he'd been hiding wasn't just a mistake, it was connected to a secret about me, something that changed everything I thought I knew about our relationship and myself. The shock hit me like a wave. I stared at the paper, heart racing, knowing that this new truth would change the story once more. And just like that, the journey I thought was ending was only beginning. Holding that letter in my hands, I felt the weight of everything shift beneath me. The words inside revealed a connection I never imagined, a hidden part of his life that tied back to my own past in ways I hadn't understood. It explained so much about the silence, the fear, and the sudden distance between us. Suddenly, the reasons behind the locked door and the changed locks weren't about control or rejection, but about protection from a complicated truth neither of us was ready to face before. We spent hours talking, untangling the stories we'd kept from each other. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the pain felt too raw to bear. But through honesty, we found a fragile new understanding. I realized that wanting to experience more wasn't a rejection of him or what we had. It was part of my journey to fully know myself, even if that meant stepping into the unknown. And he, in turn, had his own fears and regrets, but he was willing to try to face them with me, not alone. The road ahead wasn't clear, and I knew that we might still face tough decisions. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel trapped by silence or locked doors. Instead, I felt a quiet hope that honesty and patience could heal even the deepest cracks. Looking back, I learned that love isn't always about fitting perfectly into someone else's expectations. Sometimes, it's about embracing the messiness of life, the need for growth, and the courage to be vulnerable. And sometimes, it's about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. So, if you ever find yourself needing more before settling down, or facing unexpected doors closing around you, remember this: the journey to understanding yourself and others isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. And sometimes, the biggest surprises are the ones that help you find your true path, even when it feels like everything is falling apart.